Hi and welcome to The Curve Weekly, the podcast that keeps you up to date with all the money, business and stock market tea.
Everyone should experience first class at least once in their lives, and Annie shouldn't miss out just because she can't afford it.
Help me, I'm poor.
I feel exhausted.
So do I.
Like I want to go to bed.
Same.
And it's only 10 a.m.
10:20, I know it's been such a big week. I also feel a bit hungover.
Sophie's birthday yesterday.
Yeah, but I was just saying to Vic, we had espresso martinis kind of at the end of the meal, which I just think was not a good idea.
No, it's like having a coffee at, I don't know what time it
Or
finished,
like a
like
shot
10 p.m.
just before you go to bed. Like
Yeah.
it was quite bizarre. Delicious.
There is something about coffee after dinner though.
I love it.
Yeah, I can't, but unless I'm going out.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to bed, I'd be like,
I think
yeah.
that's why I slept so, like, I had such an anxious sleep. I was like,
But I remember when I was younger and I would have like 8 espresso martinis a night.
oh nah, I had total meltdowns. When
Like
I had
Red Bull and vodkas and like
oh my God.
I would never drink 8 coffees in a day. Yet when I go out, it's like, who am I?
Yeah.
You know?
I had this thought like yesterday because I had a couple of like really.
Have you ever had liquid cocaine?
What?
Sorry.
What is
I just had a
that?
memory. It's Red Bull, vodka and champagne.
No. What does it make you feel?
Like you're flying.
Nah, I think I would be needing like
Yeah. It's
be in
not
the
my drink of
ambulance too.
choice, but I
it's not my drink of choice. Far out. You already
But
drink tequila soda now.
I remember when I was at university and we would make liquid cocaine and like go to the races and stuff and like just be, it was not.
I have a feeling there might be 3-year-olds listening in the car with their mum, and I just think maybe they're
Sorry.
like, Mum, what's liquid cocaine?
Sorry, it's just a type of drink. Sorry.
Because yesterday I went out for like all of the meals with different people, and it was so nice. And I just sort of thought, do people feel like because it's my birthday that they have to pay for me? I know that's a weird thing to say, but I got to the end of the day and everyone had paid for my meals. And I was like, I definitely wasn't expecting it. But at the third meal at dinner, there was 4 of us, and I wouldn't have ordered so many drinks if I thought that I wasn't paying for it. Like I almost look back on it. I'm like, did I look like a spoilt brat? Because it was just assumed they'd pay for my dinner, and there I am having 3 frozen margaritas.
Nah, I feel like only you think about that.
Really?
Like how many drinks, like.
Yeah, but it was like an expensive bill.
Yeah, but like it's your birthday.
I know. I just felt
Otherwise,
guilty
imagine
after.
you'd have to pay for breakfast, lunch and dinner on your birthday. Like that's
I
shit.
know, but it's just more.
People want to take you out. They want to spend money on you, make you feel special. I think it's really nice.
Yeah, it was really like my sister paid for my lunch, and I was like, no, she like hasn't had a paycheck in ages, and I was like, no, it's fine. She's like, no, it's your birthday. I was like, oh, but I ordered a bubble. She was like, it's fine, you know. But it was this weird thing where I was like, is that?
I'm always the opposite. I'm like, oh, if I knew you were paying, I would have ordered more.
I would have ordered a liquid cocaine.
Oh, dear God.
God.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, well, there's been some pretty exciting news in the podcasting space.
You know, when I saw this news, I did think it's so awesome.
so awesome
to see a female podcaster earning this much money.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So she, the podcaster in question or in discussion is Alex Cooper. So Alex Cooper and
Do you listen to her podcast?
I watch the little snippets, but I don't listen to like the full episodes.
I was listening to one the other day. I think she's maybe best when she's by herself. Like I really like her solo episodes. No, I know that sounds weird, but like
No, I watched this meme and it was like Alex Cooper versus Sophia Franklin. And it was like this one girl was acting out both, and she was like, and how did that affect your upbringing? And like she was being Alex Cooper, like really in depth interview questions. And then she was like, Sophia Franklin. She was like, hey guys. Hey, sorry I'm late. It's like, hey, oh, so cool dress. And it's so true. It's just like
I haven't listened to her podcast.
different. Like it's crazy. Like, yeah, that they used to be co-hosts.
Oh, I can't even imagine being Sophia and seeing this deal that you're about to,
Oh,
it's like the
I
amount
know.
that she signed.
So-
Imagine how devastated you'd be.
Oh, for context, she signed. So Alex Cooper signed "Call Her Daddy" for $60 million 3 years ago at Spotify.
Which at the time was like maybe the biggest deal that a female podcast had ever had, right?
Biggest female podcast it ever had, yeah. And then now,
Fully repeated my sentence.
a budgie.
We're so tired. We're trying.
And then now she's just signed, it's a $120 million deal at SiriusXM for 3 years, well, just over 3 years. She has doubled that deal in 3 years. That's crazy.
But SiriusXM, is it Sirius? I feel like I remember that brand name from when I worked in radio.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's not a cool Spotify. So I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts. Like I was looking up how many subscribers there are on there, and there's like 33, 34, whereas on Spotify there's 626 million. You know, I'm like, what is that going to do to the product or her earnings or anything? Or is it kind of going to do nothing?
Well, I mean, she's got double the amount. I don't really think the millions of subscribers would really matter on those platforms.
But she has 4 million subscribers on Spotify. So if she won't be on Spotify anymore. Like you'll only be able to listen to her on this other platform.
Yeah, and I guess with Sirius, it's like they'd look at that 100 million and be like, we're going to get that back in listenership if she comes on.
It's pressure for her, I guess is what I mean. Because it's not as though you're going from Apple Podcast to Spotify. Like it's pretty random.
Yeah, and it's tiny. It's like a $12 billion company versus Spotify, which is like 70 billion.
Yeah.
It's like, but I also think that gives her leverage to be like, well, pay me more because I'm sacrificing these followers that I've got on Spotify. If I come to you, I'm going to grow your listenership massively.
God, you'd be gutted if you were Spotify trying to get her across the line for round 2.
But I reckon she's got such a strong and massive following. They'll follow her there. I don't think that'll be a problem. And she's bringing across everyone in her Unwell network as well. So Alex Cooper she's got the Call Her Daddy podcast, but then she's also set up the Unwell network, which is like her media company, and she has scouted talented influencers or podcasters, and almost brought them under her umbrella, under her company, and leveraged them through her network. So there's Alex Earl, there's Madeline Argy. I think that's the only two she's got.
And they're coming under that same contract?
Yeah. Don't know how much they'll get from that.
Imagine if she was just riding the coattails of that. Like, oh yeah, we'll just follow this $120 million deal.
So she's the second biggest podcast on Spotify.
And because Joe Rogan's first. How much is he paid to be on Spotify? Joe Rogan's Spotify deal. $250 million.
Well, there's a gender pay gap for you. No,
whoa. That is $250 million. It wouldn't even matter if no one listened. You just could call it a day at the end of your deal.
But yeah, good on her.
It's amazing.
Doubling her worth in 3 years. Pretty incredible. Yeah.
And I didn't know, like, does she come from money? Is her like...
her dad was a TV producer. So she's like always, I watched this story and she was like, I've always wanted to get into TV and radio and like in that world when she was really, really young. Then she went to Barstool. That's when the Call Her Daddy podcast just like took off. And then they separated the co-hosts.
God, I just honestly...
I would be fuming if that was you.
Imagine. No, but imagine if I was being like, welcome to the Curve podcast, and you're just sitting there on this other random thing being like, this is the Vic podcast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like trying to interview and just like seeing you sign a $120 million deal.
God, nah. That would not feel right.
I think I'd come back groveling.
yeah, totally. You'd be like, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever you want.
yeah.
Totally. God. Some other things. Warren Buffett is.
I saw that.
Good old Buffett.
So he's been selling quite a lot of his portfolio. And for anyone who doesn't know, Warren Buffett is like the king of investing, right?
Yeah. And he has an investment company called Berkshire Hathaway, which he does all his investments through. Berkshire Hathaway is listed as a public company, so you can invest in that.
Genius, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you invest in that?
No.
I feel like maybe I'd like to. Is it kind of like, would it be investing in a funds management company? Is that kind of it?
Kind of, but not really, because he buys like huge stakes in companies. So like he has like big percentages, and he like owns whole businesses, which funds management companies don't. So he'll own a whole insurance company or like a whole, But
people follow his investments like the holy grail of investing. Yeah. And when he buys something, people swarm and do the same. When he sells, it's quite amazing.
Yeah.
And I was thinking
like
the other
he could
day,
be like, just joking, not actually buying this. And
then
then
but like imagine, I mean, he's definitely at, the later part of his life. Who would be the next Warren Buffett?
Do you mean at Berkshire Hathaway?
Or just in general? He's such a pillar of what people look to for investing ideas and trends.
There's so many others. Like, yeah, it's like lots of people would follow maybe really good investors that invest in small companies or invest, like if you have a good track record, people know about it and they start copying you, which is why sometimes they don't disclose what they invest in. Because if I was still a fund manager and I had an epic performance and everyone was following what I do, I'd be hesitant to show what I invest in.
Why?
Because otherwise I wouldn't invest in my funds. People would just replicate it.
Oh, I see.
And I'd be like, no, I want your money.
Oh, okay.
So some like hedge funds don't disclose.
Is that why you were so cagey when you worked in the finance space?
No, my performance wasn't that great. No. No, it's more, some people get funny about it. But I mean, it's quite good if you bought Apple and then you were such a good fund manager that everyone bought it after you, then the performance just looks better. Do you know what I mean?
Because he actually, speaking of Apple, has sold, because he owned a huge amount of Apple shares, right?
Yeah, and he sold a big chunk of it like a few weeks ago, and that was part and parcel of the wobble that we had in the stock market.
How crazy is that he can affect the
Move
global
markets. Yeah.
economic movements?
The stock market?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like the Taylor Swift effect. And then this week he sold about just over $500 million of Bank of America, which is a bank in America.
Really? Okay.
It's probably the most insightful thing I've ever seen. Wow.
So he owned a lot in that bank, right?
He did. It's his third largest position behind Apple. And American Express he owns as well, actually. So overall, the reason why we're talking about this is that the fact that he is continuing to sell his positions is like when you've got one of the world's best investors wanting to hold cash instead of be invested in the stock market, you're kind of like, what does that mean?
Is this something that happens often, or is this quite an anomaly that he's selling this much?
It happens. It does happen, not frequently. He's not a big buyer or seller. He doesn't really do a lot of trading. He's a big buyer and holder. So the fact that he is selling, I mean, it's still like he has $37 billion of Bank of America stock. So he's selling $500 million. It's not a big sell, but the Apple one was probably more of a kind of sit up and take notice. But it would be like, I'm trying to put it in perspective. It would be like if a ship is sinking and the captain jumps off.
I'm so struggling to follow this analogy.
Like I'm trying to think of his actions, it's like if you've got one of the world's best investors that is selling stock and putting it into cash, it's like when you've got someone that is so smart and knowledgeable, it's almost like they've got this foresight, or maybe they'll have this foresight of something that's about to happen.
What part of the sinking ship is Warren Buffett? Like, is he jumping off the ship? I'm so
He's
confused.
the captain. He can see what's about to happen.
Oh, he can see?
Sorry, not the sinking. Maybe we're going into a storm.
Okay.
And the captain jumps off and gets in a tugboat and goes home. Okay, this is a really bad analogy. I was trying to think on my way here.
No, essentially what you're trying to say is that like everyone's worried he can see the storm in the future and he's deciding to like abandon ship.
Yeah.
Is that what we're going with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're on the ship going, oh, is the storm, actually the boat might get through the storm. Oh, but the captain's just jumped off. I'm going to go with the captain. You're kind of deciding.
But he hasn't abandoned his entire portfolio.
No.
So it's almost like...
Yeah.
It's a less dramatic example of that, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess the reason I'm asking if it happens all the time or if it's kind of an anomaly is he has such a massive amount invested. Sometimes when I hear news like this, I struggle to understand what to like take from it.
I guess another way of looking at it would be like if a founder sold a small amount of stock that they owned, saying they owned a whole lot of stock in a company that they founded and they decided to sell a small amount. You'd be like, okay, that's fine. If they sold a bigger amount or continued to keep selling small amounts, you'd be like, okay, this is actually something I should sit up and take notice of.
So if he was like, if this keeps happening basically over the next few weeks, then maybe it's something to be like, oh, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
But right now it's nothing to be too stressy about, is that?
Yeah, it's something to be aware of, but not to be too.
Does it have anything to do with the Mpox outbreak in Africa and like all of the I think when I read some of the notes that you'd put in here for the Curve Weekly, because I think honestly when we've had bird flu and all of these, I was always like, not scary. And COVID came around and I was like, not scary. And then it turned into something
scary,
and I think because we've now experienced that, seeing all those headlines, I'm like wondering, is that maybe, does it have anything to do with it?
I think, yes, we've got Mpox is now outside of Africa. It's in Sweden. It's in Thailand. So it is a bit concerning. Like I feel like every morning I wake up, it's in another country. And so this is not why Warren Buffett is selling, in my opinion. But I think the more countries it spreads to, the more scared investors might get and think it is another COVID outbreak, and therefore maybe they might start investing in healthcare stocks. They might not, they might be selling airlines. They might, kind of doing a bit of a reshuffle of their portfolios.
So it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
If you're invested in things that are thriving because the world is not in a global pandemic, but it looked like it was potentially could maybe, God forbid, head that way. You might want to think about where your money's invested. But because we're all so diversified.
And if you own the S&P 500,
okay.
You've got healthcare companies in there. You've got travel companies in there, unfortunately. But it's kind of, that's why the S&P 500 is so good, because it is so diverse. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd love to, I mean, let's keep an eye on that, because I think it's a good example of how, whether it politics or health, scares, all those things create, as you talk about, like the idea of uncertainty. People freak out. It means they pull their money out. Like
it's a really good reminder as well of like, you need to invest in a whole lot of different stocks, because you can't predict outbreaks like this. And from what it sounds like, we're going to have a world where we're going to have more and more of them. Do you know what I mean?
Good
Unfortunately,
God.
more and more diseases and outbreaks and all of that. So, yeah. Also in Australia, we had really interesting news around transparency.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we've been harping on about how, we need to know our value, we need to know our worth. The best way is to have transparency about how much your colleagues getting paid, how much, is this job that you're applying for, what is the salary bracket, so you don't go in and say 50,000 and they're willing to pay you 100,000. And, so yeah, just transparency in general and having conversations about money is so incredibly important. And this is exactly why, because in Australia, the gap in earnings, so the gender pay gap essentially between men and women, this is in full-time work, has fallen from, it's fallen from 12% to 11.5%. So it's not.
When you say fallen, you mean actually the gap's gotten less, which is a good thing.
Sorry, yes. Yeah. So this is all due to some law that was brought in around transparency,
and specifically in Australia,
that large companies, so any company with over 100 or more employees has to publicly report its gender pay gap. And so...
Oh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And so good.
Yeah.
That
so you can
see
see across big banks the difference. You can see across big, oil and gas companies or retailers or anything like that. Yeah. And so they're saying this is what's driven the last 4 6-monthly periods. So they do it every 6 months. So the last 4 times there's been a drop in that gap, so a reduction in that gap. And they're saying it's all because of this policy that was brought in February.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And also I think I don't know, I love the idea of making companies take responsibility for that kind of thing, because you can go unnoticed for a long time.
Totally. And also they probably didn't even know how bad it was until you start actually measuring it and reporting it. And then you're like, oh shit. And it also just encourages companies to do better. I feel like ignorance could be bliss in this sense, and the fact that they actually have to publicly report it. And now investors can compare, if you were comparing, say, 4 large banks, and you'd be like, well, hang on, ANZ is this and Westpac is this. You'd be like, Westpac, why don't you clean up your act and get in line with what you can see who's falling behind.
You can see also just the world of social media, how much people get cancelled.
Totally.
There's a social responsibility, especially if it's public, because everyone knows about it, and you don't want to be the one that's a million miles behind everyone else and not paying people what they deserve.
And it's going to be pressure from not an investor standpoint. I'd be like, I don't want to invest in this company because its gender pay gap is so bad, but also from hiring employees. As a female employee, I don't want to work somewhere where men are getting paid on average $300 a week more than I am.
Oh, what the hell?
I know. Also, a little headline I read, which was quite funny, was on dating apps now, people are cutting right to the chase and putting their credit scores on there. There's a big trend.
Are they choosing to put them on there, or are they asking someone else when they're talking to them what their credit score is?
Both, yeah. Just to lay it out right. I'm just like,
Wild.
Yeah. So a credit score is like, it's a lot more common in the US, but they are everywhere, is that credit score, it's like a 3-digit number that indicates kind of how likely you are to pay your bills on time, really. So if you...
No one will date me. Can you imagine? Fuck.
And yeah, it's based on your credit history. So any money you've borrowed and any money that you haven't repaid, or your repayment history if you've skipped a few bills, your debts, all of that. So it shows how much credit you're using as well. So it gives an all-round indication of like how much in debt they are.
Do you think I'm all for the transparency, but isn't the whole point of dating in 2024 the idea that we want to be able to stand on our own 2 financial feet, and therefore how relevant or like how important is that to be one of the first conversations you're having when you first meet or talk to someone? Like,
I mean, there's dating apps that you're straight out there telling what like sex position you like.
What app's that?
Field.
Oh yeah. Have you been on there?
No. Don't be like...
No. But it's different. Like, you know,
Why is that different?
Yeah, because I think...
Sex and money, it's like, why are we not talking about these things straight off the bat?
Yeah, I know, but
I would want to know if someone was like terrible at paying their debt and was getting into more and more issues in terms of had debt collectors following them, I'd want to know. And also, why can't you afford to pay your debt, or why are you so bad at paying debt? I don't care that you have debt, because I have a lot of debt. I've also got a lot of assets. So there's an explanation for the debt. But if I'm shit at paying it off, that's going to get me into a lot of financial stress and strife. And if I have a partner and we're trying to achieve the same financial goals and they're spending on stuff that doesn't align, or they've got a whole lot of outstanding bills, and I mean, yeah, there's a certain type of debt that I'd be okay with, but I'd want to know.
But would you want to know before you go on a date with someone?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I wouldn't want to know what sex position someone wants on the first date either.
That's not what I mean. I'm like, it's already so superficial on dating apps.
It's creating a place for people that do. It's the same with the sex position. It's like you're creating a space for people that do want to do that. There's ones that don't. There's ones that don't even want to use dating apps.
True.
Do you know? Like it's,
yeah.
I think it's just creating a lot of...
I mean, I'm all for these conversations being more common. I just think like there's already...
I don't know, like you put out your height on there. You put out your... face, like what you look like. I feel like it's part of you. I don't know.
It's so interesting. It's actually quite funny because it's, you know, we talk a lot about like mental well-being, physical well-being. On there you talk about if you go to the gym, do you like meditating, blah, blah, blah.
Do you like drinking, smoking, like all of that? Like,
it's
do you want
kind
to have
of
kids?
a valid point actually.
I was actually watching Love is Blind last night, and I was crying, like honestly, like it was, it's been a week.
It really has, isn't it?
And these people, so Love is Blind, as everyone hasn't watched, it's like you don't get to see the person. And it's quite crazy. And anyway, I was watching the last one where they get married. And anyway, it was like they're saying all these beautiful things about each other. But I was like, with this dating app stuff, it would be like, imagine not seeing the person and just seeing all the stuff about them, which includes their credit score, and then deciding, you know, like imagine if there was a Love is Blind, but like online edition.
It's kind of just dating apps though, isn't it?
But you see the person.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? Like
faces.
Yeah. Ooh, that would be weird.
But then also it's like, yeah.
I also think it's a bit of like vulnerability. Like it could be quite a beautiful thing as you like discuss your debt, work through it together to achieve the same financial goals. And I agree, people come with different levels of financial knowledge, different assets, different income. But I think it's like how you work through those together.
We did speak to someone, Nicole Haddo, a while ago, and she said something on this. I reckon we should play a little bit. I think, was it from Raising the Curve 102?
Yeah.
When I met Sam, he was renting and his lease was coming to an end. And, you know, we were in a whirlwind romance, and he's a tradie and he knew that he could come in and help me with the renovation. So he moved in after 6 weeks. We actually put an agreement in place that he would actually clear a small amount of debt that he had before he started contributing. But rather than contributing financially, each week he did things to renovate the house. I think the core of any good relationship is communication. If you get really good at communicating, you are able to address some of those situations where there's a bit of ambiguity and you're not sure where the behavior is coming from. And it gives you an opportunity to improve and work out, you know, exactly what's going on with the other person.
I would love to work with like Bumble or Hinge and do some kind of dating and money concept. How fun would that be?
Imagine like a Love is Blind financial edition. And all you could see was like
Their bank balance?
assets, their income, their expenses, their debt.
But who would ever, you're not going to be like, oh my God, they're $1 million in debt. I want to date them, like we'd need to workshop the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we need to workshop that.
Okay, I would love to bring one last headline to the table and I need you to explain it.
Yeah.
All it says is increased healthcare. Americans are getting knees and hip replacements at 40. Like what the actual hell? Firstly, aren't we meant to be living for longer?
Yeah.
Imagine in 5 years if we had to get like a hip replacement. And is this all because you often have spoken about the trend of like increased healthcare and the aging demographic. Is that what this is all about?
It's the fact that the average age of you getting a hip and knee replacement is getting younger and younger, and people used to get it, in 65 or older, whereas now it's getting much, much younger, and it's all because of like high impact sports. And people being more active, but probably in the wrong places. But also, what I was bringing this up for was just a case of like the importance of having healthcare. Like if this is the case of people getting hip and knee replacements much younger, like there's such
have health insurance, you mean?
Have health insurance. And also just like you never know what's around the corner health wise. So like have insurance, but also have an emergency fund if you need to get something that's outside of your insurance. But this is why just having health insurance is so incredibly important.
I guess also you can look in investing in companies that are helping or
exactly.
I don't know, like maybe there's like a new cool knee and hip replacement company that's
I
don't know.
And it's also a case of people aren't leaving it as late. They're getting it done early because they want a more active lifestyle later than life. So it's kind of like, oh, I've got a dodgy knee. It's like, okay, let's get this sorted ASAP because I want to live a much healthier and active lifestyle.
So much.
Oh gosh, like even sitting here, I'm like, oh, my back, it's just sitting down for too long. We're getting old. Literally,
we just need to have like
literally getting old.
Yeah, but I think. Yeah, I don't know. I'm conflicted by that headline only because we eat so much more healthy. Well, actually, maybe we don't because there's so much processed food. Yeah, maybe that's a lie. Here I'm staring at a pastry that's sitting in the studio that we've had for breakfast. Maybe this is not true.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to see if anyone was interested in learning more about, because one of the headlines you put in here, which we won't go into detail on now because we definitely have run out of time, but was about Kamala Harris and how she's looking at increasing the tax rate in the States. I wondered if anyone is interested because we were talking as a team in like our planning meeting about taxes and how they impact, like politics and society. And I don't know, it's kind of a space I don't really totally understand. And I think with the election coming up, maybe there's people that are interested in that. Like
the US election. Yeah, I think we should do a US election special.
Maybe we'll put like a little, what are they called? Like a poll or something. And like I think it's only in Spotify. So if you're listening on Spotify, there'll be like a little poll underneath. Can you just let us know if you're interested in that? Because if not, we won't.
Yeah.
We won't bother.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's one of those, it does sound really boring, but I do think it's important to understand.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, the politicians like to say that all their policies are good for the environment, and the other person is like, no, mine are, and this, they always bag each other. But yeah, in actual fact, we'll do a deep dive for you and tell you whether you should or shouldn't worry.
Just to understand it a bit more.
Yeah.
Also, we promised to have naps.
Yeah.
This week we're having a very relaxed weekend, aren't we? So we come back next week energetic.
Yeah, long weekend this weekend. Whoop whoop. In the UK.
Oh yeah. What are you doing?
Nothing. Relaxing, sleeping.
I was waiting for you to say I'm going to that All Points East Festival, and I was like, no, Vic. Oh, you want to?
Maybe.
Oh my God, okay. Home by 9, please.
You can talk. You have one espresso martini and you're half asleep.
I know. Sorry. Yeah. I actually don't even know how to end
I love
this
every
episode.
time Soph drinks. She's like,
I hate
I'm not
it.
going to drink again.
I hate it. I just feel so depressed when I stop drinking. If anyone is sober and has been for a while,
why don't you just do it?
I try. It's really hard. I mean, I'm not even that into it, but for some reason I just, like tonight we're meant to be having work drinks. I'm like, what am I going to get? A lemonade?
I wouldn't judge you.
I know.
It's in your own head.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to The Curve Weekly. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the money, biz, and stock market news. And if you like what you heard, we would love a review. Thank you.
Yes, we would love a review. But if you
Only
did
a good
hate
one.
it, please, don't leave one if you hate it. No, but in all seriousness, could you please leave a review? Because it really helps other people find our cute little podcast.
And we hope you have a good week and see you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye. Sweet. Yeah. See you next Tuesday. Lol. See you next Tuesday. I mean Monday.